your event or whatever, you know, and you're hiring them, and that's a commercial use. So technically that person has to follow through with the FAA regs, the same as Bruno and Dave and other people. And there's a vast number of abuses out there. So I think it's definitely not lost on the FAA that there are recreational users who may be need to conform to more constraints. I mean, right now, essentially flying within line of sight, with under 400 feet, having certain markings on your drone, registering it, and if you're a recreational user and you're flying it recklessly, then technically you can be cited by the FAA. I mean, the issue that I see with all of this stuff is that the FAA does not have the personnel to monitor the skies. That's not what they do, right? So, this has to come to somebody's attention or to their attention through a third party, which is, essentially somebody calling the police or somebody doing this, that, and the other thing. And so the connection between the registration requirement that's now in place with recreational drone users essentially having to register their drone, I think is really more for for when drones are involved in incidents or there's an investigation. That they're going to have the investigators are going to have an easier time identifying at least the owner, if not the operator of the drone. I think that's what that's about.
All drones are required to be registered now?
Yes.
Yes.
Some of them, like the one that you could buy $100 one.
Yes,
I think they come with something that says you do not require register, so that's not true.
As of December, all of them, and it applies to all owners over the age of 12 years old.
I have a question that hasn't been raised yet. Maybe it's premature, but in the same way that, 1,000 years ago, 2 million people on the earth didn't really have an impact to do stuff, but now with 7 billion on the planet and doing what we're doing, we notice we're having impacts. This is growing so fast. I mean, we started out with drones, relatively new technology, and the numbers that you gave at the front end of 2.5 million Americans have them, or whatever the numbers were. Can you conceive of, and should we be looking at, the combined impact of these multiple technologies? Just like we're going to be building more and more freeways because we have more and more cars. And so, we think of the immediate problem without looking at the long term. And I'm wondering, especially in the ethical issues, and one other issue I'll piggyback onto this, the whole area of transparency. Who owns the data that's taking a picture of my house or your field, even if it's ancillary to the purpose of the research? Do I have ownership of that in the same way that I own a house? Two different things, but a couple of questions.
Well, you talk about the growth. I guess that's what bothers me. I mean, I'm wondering if there's more than a privacy issue, but there's a quality of life issue. I'm sorry, Bruno, but they are irritating. Okay, it goes around.
Yeah.
Okay? They're fascinating first, but they can bug you after that, right? I'm not talking about the commercial, where the guy is running away, there's drones all over the place, there's the car and take off. I think that keeps coming up to me. We did a story, we interviewed some folks who did a wonderful documentary of a Civil War battle reenactment, and they used drones to do it, and man, was it good. It was really, really cool. So we were going to write this great story, and we started interviewing the Civil War reenactors who were furious. So come on, what's the problem here, guys? Lincoln didn't have drones. It affected our experience, our authenticity of the battle to have those doggone things buzzing around our heads. And we had no decision over that. Somebody else made that decision that they were going to, intrude upon our activity. I think there's a lot of weird things out there that are coming. And Terry, I think you're right. I mean, it is like the freeways. The doggone thing explodes and the conflicts multiply.
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly people who are writing in this area about, look, don't legislate, technology specific. Legislate more globally. Like, we have a variety of emerging technologies, all of which pose issues, a variety of different issues. And some in the industry are saying, why are you picking on drones? There's all kinds of things that are piercing people's expectations of privacy. I think, the reason I think the maps are so poignant is that drones are immediate. When you have 2.8 million people in the United States buying them, lawmakers are responding to, and you have news stories of people saying, I look outside my window and I see a drone and I live in downtown Miami on the 41st floor, like, what in the world's going on here? So lawmakers are responding to that, and, you know, that's sort of has a trickle-down effect. But is it really any different from, you know, how society, I mean, is it our version of how society responded to the invention of the telephone? Or, you know, the manned aircraft? I think it's just a
I think
different
another good example is the wireless technology.
Yeah.
You know, when first they came out, you know, everyone was concerned, it was so protected. Now you have entire cities where you connect and no one worries about, you know, what kind of crime could you do using that wireless. So that has completely gone away, you know, that aspect. Pardon me? Yeah.
So what about other countries? So are the European Union nations more strict using drones?
Yeah, I can give you an example of how it is in Italy. It's much more, it's just as strict in many ways that you have to have a training course, yet you have to be trained. So there is an organization that you apply for their training, you get trained, and then it's the equivalent process of getting the COA or getting the license and doing that. But then there is no really limitation, because in the training they train how you can use, what you can do with it, so it's part of that. But the training lasts very short time and you get basically a license. You're a drone pilot license, which is very different what we have to do here. Here the exams deals how you're gonna, it's more about regular pilot exams. You says, you know, you have a problem, how do you deal with the passengers? You know, it's just like, what are you talking about? So there are questions, books like this for you to do that exam. It's just a written exam, but there are questions that related completely different from the drones. I mean, they're just about planes. So yeah, so you do like 1 or 2 days course, you get that, and then you can fly.
Yeah, I don't know the details about other countries, or you might be able to speak more, but I did think it was interesting talking to my colleagues in Fisheries and Wildlife that they said the only country in East Africa that they could really effectively use drones for their research was Uganda, that in the other countries they, I don't know, again, how widely this applies, but at least for them as researchers, they would have to have some sort of physical connection to whatever, you know, some string or cord, that, you know, they couldn't just have some free-flying drone doing stuff, that the governments would be very suspicious of, you know, these Westerners coming in and, you know, messing around with these blue drones, so, yeah.
That's interesting.
I just have a quick question about, you had these slides over of the hummingbird and the
Yeah.
beetle and the mosquito. Are those real? Do they exist?
Well, you can't go down to Best Buy and buy them.
Right.
But the hummingbird is actually a drone that has been made by AeroVironment, which is a small UAV company in Southern California. And it's being adapted and worked on for research and development purposes by DARPA. So yeah.
Is there a limit? Is there a limit where the FAA or anybody else? I'm trying to figure out how to say this. Is there a size limit where if you get small enough,
Mhm.
it no longer qualifies? Like, is FAA going to be
No, they
regulating all
have
these
micro.
mosquitoes?
Right, what are they, is it the nano?
That's right. You have
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
So there's different categories. So the under 55 pounds and above 4 pounds, like below 55 pounds is sort of one, a small UAS. The
Yeah.
FAA treats that. And then there's this nano category, which some of the pictures I showed you would fall into. And they haven't yet developed regs for the nanos, but
But do they work? The beetle and the mosquito exist?
yeah, they do. I mean, you know, those are in the hands of Department of Defense and in DARPA and stuff like that. So they're not ones that, but you know,
In
I
a
think
recent movie that just came out, what was the name of it?
That's
the eyes in the sky.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's in there.
I don't know.
I don't
There's
know,
a
we
beetle
haven't
and a
seen it.
hummingbird.
There you
Those are scarier than me than the big ones.
You can have made out of paper.
go. Mhm.
Yeah.
And how about, I hear a couple of years ago that there were regulations about you needed to be a citizen to be able to fly a drone. Has that changed? Or you still need to be a citizen?
No citizen,
No citizen.
PR, permanent resident.
But the university won't allow anybody who's not a citizen of this country to fly a university-owned drone.
Really?
Why?
I'm just saying.
Has that been
that's-
vetted with
that's something that-
University Council? That's interesting.
Initially, it was so much where we felt like we couldn't even like take them into the same room with it. I mean, they were very, no joke. And they said,
You might
well,
spread your form.
I can just go and buy one from Amazon tomorrow. I know, I'm just telling you. So I was happy to be a US citizen at that point, to start buying, but it was,
Well,
that's what they want.
even trying to get engineering students to help us build drones and do different things, and export controls are, those are all things that they're hypersensitive to.
There's something here, I don't know what other places.
I think we've got time for one or two more questions.
I want to mention just something on the size that it's, you know, the FAA again is concerned with the national airspace and they don't want somebody Cessna or a 747 running into these things. So that's sort of what their regulations come from, the size. And if it's something nano, they probably, you know, a bug hits a plane, which happens all the time, who cares, right? But if
Yeah,
a
but
55
when a bird-
pound, you know, if the microdrone hits a plane, gets sucked into a turbofan, you know, that's a problem, obviously.
Right.
And something even bigger, which is the medium size that, I think, did you show the medium size one? I mean, those are just going to be regulated anymore because that's what they're concerned about, the national airspace. And I have a feeling that they're not going to care about people so much eventually passing these new laws in these communities as long as they're laws, you know, for low flying drones.